I'm very glad to greet you here. You are very brave people. In such a bad weather, you come here for this lecture, and I hope you are not hungry, because you will not only listen about food, but you'll see lots of food. You'll see lots of food, lots of illustrations, and I'll try to move you to the world of Soviet cuisine. I'll try to make you to feel at home there, as if you are there. But first of all, I wanted to say a few words. It's just some very important question for me. And I wanted to say a few words about food studies in Russia. Food studies in Russia, surprisingly, are not very popular. You know that now on Russian television and everywhere, and magazines and mass media, there are lots of books and everything about food, lots of programs about food. Food is everywhere now. But when you think about serious academic studies, there is kind of a very, very negative attitude to this subject. It's not only negative, but it's it is considered to be a very low subject, not worth studying, not worth talking seriously about it, which is very strange. And at Moscow State University, we are now trying to overcome this problem, and we are trying to make serious food studies. So this presentation will be part of our general food program at Moscow State University. First of all, I wanted to say a few words about general traditional Russian food, because it's not possible to understand Soviet food or modern Russian food or old Russian food if you don't know some main principles of Russian cuisine, of Russian gastronomy. Sorry, I didn't realize that I'll have to do this. So, Russian food tradition. Are you sure that I need this thing? Then I'll probably sit down, because it's not very comfortable with all the papers and microphones. Two main features characterize Russian food tradition in general, and at the first time they are mutually exclusive. On the one hand, Russian cuisine is very traditional, not to say conservative. It has been true to its general preferences for centuries. And on the other hand, it's widely open to outside influences, absorbing and adjusting various dishes to its taste. That's some illustration of Russian food. And here we have what modern Russian cuisine consists of. Not only modern, but Soviet, as I said, and old Russian. There is a traditional Russian basis. There are dishes of different ethnic groups living in Russia. Very great Soviet influence that will be the subject of our talk today. And international influence is also very important. And this international influence was different during different time periods. Traditional Russian staple food was formed long ago. Russian cooking traditions, like everywhere else, were formed by various factors: history, way of life, climate, weather, and so on. And for many centuries, till the middle of 20th century, Russia was an agrarian country. So it's not surprising that grain was the basis of Russian food tradition, and it still is, I think, in different forms, as a porridge, as bread, as different kinds of pies, pancakes, and so on. Famous Russian pies, pyrogi, and even soups. There are lots of use of grain in Russian traditional soup. traditional Russian oven formed some cooking traditions, like baking and boiling, that are preferable in Russian cuisine and preferable instead of frying or grilling the products. A lack of herbs and vegetables is also quite noticing, because there are not very many vegetables, not very many greens growing in Russia. And this made the fermentation a main source of vitamins in Russia. So fermented vegetables are very popular now and have been very popular since ancient times. Just very simple root vegetables and things like onion, horseradish, they are used as main spicy resources, Well, different ethnic groups, you can see here some examples, but there is one important thing that all products that were taken by Russian food, they sort of immediately have a specific Russian taste, like Middle Asian pilaf that was introduced during Soviet time in Russian gastronomic culture. But of course now we have only some sort of kasha with meat. It's not this delicious Middle Asian pilaf, but just something that is good for Russian taste and which reminds them porridge, kind of porridge with meat. Soviet influence and international influences are also important. And now let's turn to the Soviet period and to the Soviet times. I want to say that we will talk mostly about politics, about ideology, about ideas, and about images. Not about, some very important things like the hunger and starvations that happened during the first years of the Soviet state and during wartime. But they are very important, but they are not the subject of this presentation. We will talk more about ideas and ideals than about real life. And, and I want to start with a song, with the International. It's in Russia, the song till the Second World War was sort of a national anthem. It was used during all official gatherings, during all different official situations. So it was very important. And it's interesting that the Russian translation differs from English and French. It is different. And it's not just a mistake or just happened like this. There is something very important behind it, because it reflects the main idea of the first years after revolution, the first years of the Soviet state, when it was very important to destroy everything down to the foundations, and then we'll build the new world. Not just, to change something or to make some renovations or reforms, but to destroy completely. At least that's how it was announced, and at least that's how it was sung. And now we'll have a song. Huh? about the new one? Speaking about food, the main idea was that we shall start a new life in this case as well, as in anything else. Actually, first of all, the first changes were touched the family. The idea was that the family, in its traditional sense, with husband and wife and children, it's something very old. Now, in the new life, it is not possible. And the idea was to have everything in a sort of a special, in a kind of commune, where people live together, work together, eat together, and they bring up their children together. So, you know, nothing of this old imperial egoism when you have your own wife, your husband, and children. So the idea was to free women, and the very popular slogan after the revolution was "Down with kitchen slavery." To free women so they can work on the factories and the plants and agriculture and some places that were important for the state and not for their own private purposes for their own family. So to free women, it was necessary to build, to change the way of life completely, to build new, well, they were called canteens, stоловые. We can't call them cafe or restaurant because they were completely different. To make lots of ready-to-eat food, so the woman could be free from her, you know, from her family burdens. That's another poster. There were lots of posters after the revolution, and this one, you know, again, it shows that the woman should learn, should be educated, should be literate, but not just to spend her life in the kitchen. And this poster celebrates the Women's Day as the day of the freedom from kitchen slavery and from, you know, different kitchen responsibilities. You can see here a free woman with a red flag and an old woman who is, you know, who is covered by some stupid home things, old things. And to make it possible, lots of public catering, lots of organizations of public catering were creating. It's not possible to translate общий пит on any language, I think, because it's something very, not very Russian, but very Soviet. But as you can see here on this poster, it was supposed to be something nice because there is not only pancakes, but pancakes with caviar in this public catering organization, which is not bad. Lots of posters showing how it was supposed to look like. Smiling faces, everything is very clean. And food here is still very traditional, very common. Eggs, bread, tea, milk, pieces of meat, something very simple. This is from the 1920s. It's again the same. It shows the modern style of this factory canteens for everybody. Again, clean with white, with tables covered with white cloth and with good furniture and very modern. This is something different, but again, it was very popular during Soviet time, especially in the first stages. It was possible to take food home, ready-to-eat food home. It was even hot, so you can eat it just as it is. This was, you know, this is, well, it's the same, more or less. but the atmosphere is very beautiful. It was actually, this poster is from a little bit later time, but it was important not only to feed people, but to make a beautiful atmosphere, sort of reminding of slightly of an old time. So it's the end of the 30s. And this is 20s, it's after the revolution. The style is absolutely different. And here we have photographs showing how it was in reality. This one is immediately after the revolution, and it's a public eating house. And the people here, it's not just some peasants or simple workers, they are delegates of the party committee, and so there are some special people, but as you can see, everything is very simple. No good furniture, no good food or anything. And this is later, but again everything is simple, and this is the самообслуживание, self-service food. Well, again, some example. And this is something that was typical for the period before the Second World War. It was called kitchen factory, and indeed it looks like factory more than like restaurant or cafe or some nice place. And it was done on purpose. It was not just that they have no money or anything to make it more cozy or beautiful. The idea was that you need your food just, to live, not to enjoy, not to have company over it, just to come to eat and to go back to work. That was the purpose at this period, and these kitchen factories, they were just the right thing for this. And that's how the kitchen on that kind of establishment looked like. Huge. Everything is huge and not very beautiful again. There is one thing that it's a separate subject, a special subject. But there was one thing that Soviet people and Soviet government were very proud of, and that was Soviet railways and Soviet trains, the system of Soviet trains and Soviet cars. As you can see here a dining room. This one is very, sort of Soviet portion, beautiful. And now we'll have песенку послушаем. It's a song from a film. The film was produced immediately after the Second World War. It's 1947. And it shows this train dining room in its best. And everybody drinks wine, no vodka, no beer, but just only wine. Everything is very nice. And the guy who will be singing a song, he became a very famous Soviet composer, Lectorium.
Мы прощаемся с Москвой, перед нами путь большой. Здравствуй, будем знакомы, дай мне руку, незнакомый путь твой. Поем, друзья, дай мне покой. Пусть летит до океана, тысячи друзей, прощался, чтоб подольше спи. Все тепло моей руки, знаю, нежно быть сердцу, ведь из километров пустяки. Поем, друзья, поем, дай мне покой. Пусть летит до океана, тысячи друзей, пой идет, все перенальной, па-па-па-пам, родимую землю. Над полями, над тайгой, жить там, где не победы, а простор нашей Родины большой.
very important for some reasons for the Soviet people after the revolution. Well, actually, it's some things that is important for Russian people, always is important, which surprises me, but that's true for different historical periods. It was formulated by Vladimir Lenin, the head of the Soviet state, in the following words: to catch up and overtake, well, he said to catch up and overtake Western countries, but it became popular in this form as to catch up and overtake America. So we were not only building communism, we were not only building new habits, new way of life, new traditions, but we were also catching up with America, and it was extremely important. There is lots of posters, we'll see some of them. You see, we should catch up America in milk production, in meat production, here, milk, meat and butter and everything. It was it was in the center of attention of government and people as well. Well, speaking about food tradition in 1920s, we could call this time a sort of a revolutionary asceticism. The idea was that all things like lots of food and good food, they are all supposed to stay in the old times, and in the new time you don't need things like that. And the famous words by Mayakovsky, poem, say, eat your pineapple, chew your grouse, your last day is coming, you bourgeois louse. It was 1917, sorry, immediately after the revolution. So all pineapples and grouses were supposed to stay in the past, and in the future just simple food for good, simple people. That was the idea. You can see in the painting, you can see the realization of the same idea. This is the painting of a famous Russian painter, Pavlovskaya, and it shows the family, the workers' family, celebrating the first anniversary of Soviet Revolution, Russian Revolution. And everything is very simple, even ascetic, food, dresses, although they're nice dresses, the best probably because it's a great holiday for the family, but it's still very simple. And the next painting, it's also Pavlovskaya, it's also the same time, 1918, and you can see the main food of this time, and that was true for most people. It was black bread, potatoes, and herring, because it was time of starvation, time of hunger. But Pavlovskaya shows it not as a, as an illustration of some bad situation, some difficulties, but it shows it beautifully, because this is food for people, and that's how it should be, and it's normal. But everything changed in 1930s, and the ideas and ideals took a new turn. This revolutionary asceticism went to the past, and the main idea that was formulated by the government and personally by Stalin was the idea of food abundance. The idea was that the people now should have everything that the only wealthy and rich people used to have in the past. It was absolutely different turn, but there were many different ideas at this time, and they were all interconnected. Like the idea of a big family, no communes now, no communal families when everybody lives together. Now it's just the world of the privacy of the very happy Soviet families with good food, with lots of food. So absolutely something different. Well, just some pictures showing the idea of well, Stalin with children, with happy children. Well, everything is possible to overcome, even drought. This idea was somehow it was very understandable. It was very dear and near to the people's heart, because in every country there are tales about the magic places where there is an abundance of food and you don't need to do anything to have the best food in the world. In Russia we also have such fairy tales, and we have some magic things that are supposed to bring you good food just as magic. One of them is about the milk rivers and with Kisel banks. It is usually translated, I tried to find the translation, and it usually is translated as the words from the Bible. I can't see it. The land of milk and honey, it's the quotations from the Bible. But you know, when you are talking about food, it is important what food is supposed, you know, to feed the people in the fairy tale. And in Russia, it's milk and kisel. And the bad news for those who don't know this is that kisel is not a fruit jelly, as it is usually translated, but kisel is a fermented kind of jelly made from grain, from oat or from whatever you have. No, usually it is oats. So it is milk and grain as a paradise for the Russian peasant. Another story is about the magic tablecloth. Here you can see an illustration, and by the way, this illustration is from the 1950s. So it shows the best food things that were imagined by the painter in this time, it's 1950s. You can see here sturgeon and something else, some nice delicacies. So I want to read you just a short piece from this fairy tale. Let's see the next one. It's the story about the two Ivans. There were two Ivans. You can see them here in this illustration. One was rich and one was poor. And they were both Ivans, Ivan the rich and Ivan the poor. Ivan the rich had everything. Had bread in the oven and meat on the table and well-furnished house and bins full of flour and stores full of wheat and good things to wear as well as to eat. Well, and so on. Lots of sheep and cows and so and lots of food. And you know, Ivan the rich had no children, big or small. And Ivan the poor, the story is quite different. He had 7 children and nothing to his name save a cat by the fire and the frog in the mire. And all his 7 children, they sat in a group and they begged for buckwheat porridge and for cabbage soup. But there was nothing to give them. Not a crust of bread and not a scrap of meat. But, and of course, as you understand, rich Ivan was bad and the poor Ivan was very good. And finally, good poor Ivan got this magic tablecloth and it gave him lots of food, and the food is the following. And what appeared on the table? Cabbage soup and mushroom pie, and a great big ham to cheer the eye. So this illustration, it shows more preferences of the person from 1950s than from those people, from peasant people who were telling the story of 2 Ivans. For them, cabbage soup and mushroom pie, and to add ham, big ham, it was more than enough, and that was plenty. This is another illustration to this story, and the next picture shows a sort of a modern reconstruction of this magic tablecloth, how the modern people think it looked like. The very popular slogan in 1930s was that we will make the fairy tales come true. And speaking about food, this idea was also put on the agenda, to make these fairy tales about magic tablecloths, about milk rivers and kisel banks, to make them true. That was sort of the main task of the government concerning food. We can see how the illustrations changed. Now they show the abundance of everything, the plenty of food, rich food. This picture is painting is 1930s, and it shows different kinds of Soviet. It was called not Russian bread, but Soviet bread. There were lots of illustrations showing people on a very, lots of food and good food, not just bread and potato, but a lot of delicious, lots of delicacies. This is the painting of Russian writer Alexei Tolstoy by Pyotr Penchilovsky. And illustrations from Soviet cookbooks of the same period. They also show this abundance, they also show this magic tablecloth full with everything. I don't know whether you can see or not, but that's very famous Moscow grocery store called Yeliseevsky. It's now opened and it's as beautiful as ever, but it was closed immediately after the revolution because it was too, too pompous for the first years of Soviet state. But it was reopened in the 30s, as rich as it was before the revolution. And here you can see the picture from this time. So this abundance, this beautiful food was not only in the paintings, but it was also in the movie films. And this film that was very popular during Soviet time, the Cossacks of the Kubansky Kazaki. It was extremely popular during Soviet time because it was about love, because there were beautiful songs and lots of jokes. It was a little bit simple, but good. But it was criticized during Perestroika because the main idea was that it was filmed immediately after the Second World War, when the people were starving, when there was no food, no money, nothing. And it shows absolutely different picture, because it shows this world of abundance, of everything, world of plenty that people dreamed of and the Soviet government sort of dreamed of.
Желаю всем вам счастливой удачи, успехов, радости и веселья!
the south of of Russia. So of course there were more food than we had in Moscow or Leningrad or anywhere else. So probably that explains why there are so many nice and good things on this market here. As I said, there were many changes, and the family values, traditional family values, came back to the Soviet life. Big families, happy smiles. That was the idea of a new life. And the paintings are now different. They show people sitting on a family circle, educated people reading books, reading newspapers, with lots of nice things on their table, and it's beautifully laid. So it's absolutely different idea and the different world picture. Well, some more illustrations from that period. And even not only in towns and cities, but even the rural life was supposed to change and to be more beautiful and more abundant. Well, that's some episode. And photographs of this period, they show that there were really many changes in people's life. And celebration, this is the celebration of the Victory Day, so it's sort of a special day. And this is just somebody's birthday in 1930s. But you can see the changes. They really happened. And in the village, well, of course, this picture, it is from the newspaper. So I don't think that these people, these agrarian workers, that they had that kind of breakfast every morning. But still, there were changes even in the villages. I must say that the idea of creating a new world and the world of abundance was not only just declared by the government. There were many steps were taken to make it true, to bring it to life. Unfortunately, the times were very contradictory, and there were lots of money, lots of people were involved in the creating this new world. But at the same time, on the peak of everything, sometimes some tragic things happened and everything stopped. And I just want to say a few words about well, there were very many scientific research work dealing with the food studies, but I just want to say to mention only one. It's the activity of Nikolai Vavilov, who is a very famous Soviet, well, I can't say agrarian or botanist, I don't know, biologist, but he was everything. Actually, his works are universal, and his works are still used by scientists. But what is important, that he traveled a lot during the peak of his activity. He organized a very important botanic agronomic expeditions, and he visited more than 180 countries on the world, which is incredible when you think about the times when he was traveling. It was at the end of 1920s and the beginning of 1930s. It was a very difficult time for the world. And Vavilov's diary tells us about lots of problems. Visas, of course everybody in the world suspected that he's a spy. Nobody believed, Soviet spy, red spy. Nobody believed that he's interested only in seeds and grains. It was suspicious. So lots of problems, lots of difficulties, different countries, and as a result, a huge collection. Actually, it is still considered to be the largest collection of plant seeds in the world, the largest one. And of course, he was supported by the state. He had money to buy the seeds. He had money. He was given money to travel. a special institute was organized for his research. So there was lots of attention from the government to his work, and he was supposed to create new kinds of seeds, new kinds of potatoes, and to feed the people. Unfortunately, as I said, the time was contradictory and his fate was very tragic. He died in exile, and well, the tragic side was that he died from starvation. You know, the man who created the hugest collection of seeds died from hunger in an exile. But what is interesting, I just want to read you some to read you some memoirs about the episode, about this collection, because its story, I think it is sort of incredible. It was kept in Leningrad. It was kept in Leningrad. There was no time to evacuate it, to take it from the Leningrad, because before the blockade started. And during the winter of 1941 and 42, when the Hitler's troops were blockading Leningrad, cutting off food and supplies, the scientists who worked there protected the seeds stored inside the buildings, which amounted to several tons of nutritious food from the starving Russians outside. At night, thousands of rats would invade the building. The staff guarded the seeds collection with metal rods. When some collections of potatoes needed resowing during the winter, institute workers found a plot outside Leningrad near the front. So it was really a very sort of a heroic deed, and many of them died from starvation, you know, like these people who were in charge of potatoes. Potatoes were, well, they were sowing them and collecting them, but not eating them. And of 11 people, 9 died from hunger. I think it's a very sort of very tragic and very heroic story. This is the collection of corn from the same institute, Vavil's Institute. It is interesting that this story is very popular in the West, on the West. It is sort of considered to be very heroic and very special. And this year we had a discussion with the students about this story. And it's interesting that Russian students, they don't think there is anything special. Well, they think it was not a very clever deed, you know, to die from starvation, having all the seeds and potatoes at your disposal. It's probably would be better to save some lives and, you know, to sacrifice this, well, collection. So it's sort of a different attitude now. The times changes and the attitude changes. The next very important episode in Stalin's gastronomical history is the Anastas Mikoyan's activities and his work. He was People's Commissar of External and Internal Trade, and he was also in charge of the food industry during 1930s. And he did a lot. You know, actually he created, he's a father and creator of the Soviet food, because all important innovations were made during his time, during 1930s, when he was in charge of food production in the Soviet Union. You know, and Stalin personally supervised all his deeds. He was very interested in this part of activities, you know, in food production. He thought it very, very important and very serious. There is a quotation. Yes, Mikoyan on his, well, made some presentation, I don't know where, I have to sit here, but that's what he said about Stalin. Some people may think that Comrade Stalin, overburdened with important problems of international and domestic policy, has no time to spare to such things as sausage production. But it is not true. I once told Comrade Stalin that I want to increase sausage production, and Comrade Stalin approved my decision. Among other things, he underlined that many capitalists in America made enormous fortunes selling sausages and became millionaires, sausage kings. We, comrades, don't need kings, but we need sausages. And that's true. Stalin personally supervised the production of different food products and sausages especially. Well, everything, even the labels and names of sausages were supervised personally by him. But Mikoyan was, of course, the main force behind the new reforms and new things that started in Russia. One and probably the most important thing that was introduced during Soviet time is so-called doctor's sausage, doctorskaya kolbasa. It was the first thing that was made that was produced by special decree that was signed by Mikoyan himself. And this doctor's sausage was supposed to go to hospitals. That's why it has such strange name. It was supposed to go to hospitals, and it was very nice. When you read the recipe, this first recipe in 1930s, it sounds very appealing. There were only natural foods like beef of the highest quality, pork of the highest quality, cream and eggs, and nothing else, just only very natural ingredients. So this sausage, you know, it was not, that kind of food was unknown in Russia before, in the Soviet Union and in Russia before. So it was important to, you know, well, that's the meat processing plant that was named after Mikoyan, and this is where the production of this sausage started. But it was very important to show people that it's very good and it's a good product, because nobody wanted to buy it at first. It was unknown, and it was not meat, not bread, and not possible to understand what it was. But the propaganda was very strong, and in Soviet cookbooks there were lots of recipes with these sausages, with different kinds of sausages. There were pictures like this with some strange phrase. I don't understand it, to tell the truth. There is no better bird in the world than pork sausage. Well, I understand this one, that you need to have more pork, or more, well, I don't know how to say, you know, what's that? Well, farms producing pork, but this is it is supposed to be some people's saying. But there were pictures showing happy wives making very good dinners with sausages, and this one says, demand sausages everywhere. It was supposed that the sausages were everywhere around the Soviet Union. Again, the same thing. Oh, well, just some old photograph. A very important event happened in 1936, and it was Mikoyan's visit to the United States. Again, as it was in Vavilov's case, there were some contradictions, you know, in politics. On the one hand, Mikoyan not only went to the United States, he not only visited all the most important plants and food factories and meet lots of people, but he even brought cash with him brought money and cash with him to buy, well, whatever he needed. Lots of money were given, and he brought very many important things that helped later to start meat production and other things. One of his favorite was this sort of a hamburger. He was fascinated by the idea of American hamburgers. He thought it's very convenient, very good. It's meat and bread, and it's hot. So it was sort of his kind of obsession. And he introduced that kind of food in the Soviet Union, but it failed. Actually, everything else that he brought from the United States became very popular, except these hamburgers. It's still, well, needed 50 years, whatever, that hamburgers became popular in this country. It was not only different kinds of food that he brought from the United States, but different kinds of packaging, like milk in the bottles, packaged food, which was not known in the Soviet Union before his visit to the United States, and of course the fridge. You know, it was something unthinkable in the Soviet Union during that time, during 1930s. Well, of course we have winters that are good for freezing, food freezing, but well, it's not enough, you know, to start things like frozen food production or ice creams if you don't have freezers. And Mikoyan brought this kind of technologies from the United States. Unfortunately, they started, the plants were organized, and the production of fridges started only after the Second World War. But, well, the idea was brought from the United States. Another thing that was brought from the United States, technologies that were brought and that became very popular in the Soviet Union, and they were by special supervision of Mikoyan, who loved ice cream. Ice cream was some exotic food before the revolution, only for very rich people, because it was very difficult to make it. And he wanted to make it just some simple, inexpensive food for everybody, and he succeeded. The ice cream, you can see here, is the old advertisement. Again, I like this style, you know, it's style of the 1930s. Demand ice cream everywhere. You should demand sausages, demand ice cream, you should demand everything, because everything that is produced in this country is for you. So don't forget about it. So ice cream was his favorite, and there was even a joke. Stalin once made a joke, well, probably a dangerous joke, stating, "You, Anastas," Anastas was Mikhail's name, "you, Anastas, care more about ice cream than about communism." Well, more posters. And it was very popular to show ice cream surrounded by ice. It was some special idea. Well, I don't know. And this old photograph is, I think it's very funny. It's 1936. No, not sorry. It's the end of 30s, and it is called -35. Because you can see it's very cold. Well, it's more recent photograph. That's another innovation that was introduced into Soviet cuisine, and it was brought again from the United States, tomato juice. Well, actually all juices, the idea of fruit and vegetable juices came to the Soviet Union from the United States. There were no idea about any fruit or any kind of juices in Russia before that time. because they were different. They were drinks like kvass, like, I don't know, berries, very juice, well, from berries, yes, but not from fruit and vegetables. I want to read you one, yes, I want to quote you. Yes, I want to quote you some famous Russian writers, Soviet writers, Ilf and Petrov, who went to the United States the same year as Anastas Mikoyan did. And they were also, first it was again 1936, and they wrote a very funny and very interesting memoirs about their trip, and there are lots of bits and pieces about food, American food. So that's what they write. Persistent advertising has taught Americans to drink juices before breakfast and lunch. In the juices are vitamins which are presumably beneficial to the customers, while the sales of juices is, there is some issue, to benefit to fruit merchants. We like this American custom. At first we drank the thick yellow orange juice. Then we passed to the green juice of the grapefruit. Then before eating, we began to take the grapefruit itself. Finally, we began to like the tomato juice, peppering it a bit beforehand. That proved to be the tastiest of all and the most refreshing, and it best suited our South Russian stomachs. You know, what is interesting in this quotation is that it explains why tomato juice became so popular in the Soviet Union, because it was very close, especially to people from the south of Russia, it was very close to their taste. There were no taste for oranges or for whatever, well, because there are no oranges, they were exported, but they don't grow in Russia. And tomatoes grow in the south of Russia, and they are they are good, they proved to be good for the Russian taste. That's, I think, why they became popular. Another thing is that they are good, to drink with food, and they are good to drink with vodka. Probably that was another reason. Lots of posters about tomato juice. The propaganda was very, I could say even aggressive, because the slogans, the posters, the advertisements were everywhere. Just juices. It's just to show you that not only American drinks and American food was introduced during the Soviet time. Traditional Russian foods were also made available for everybody, were sold everywhere. Kvass, and here we have tea, and tea again, tea is good for your health, and of course vodka. The production of vodka was increased, but by this time, there was anti-vodka propaganda, but it's another story. Let's go. Yes, that's another thing. It's so-called Soviet champagne. It's the same time and it's the same reason. It's 1930s, and the production was based on the technologies that Anastas Mikoyan saw in the United States. First, the idea was to introduce French technologies, and the specialists were sent to France, to buy and to learn how to do it. But it turned out that the French production was not possible in Russia. It was too difficult, too expensive. So then it was decided to turn to the American experience, and it worked. This time it worked, and the so-called Soviet champagne was based on American technologies of producing the sparkling wine. Of course, there were problems with the name. There were problems with the name because the name champagne can be used only for the drinks that are produced in the special parts of France. But it was, there were problems, but they were solved finally. Just very simple, and I think it's sort of very Russian style. You can see the idea was that when it is written Shampanskaya in Cyrillic, it's a different thing than champagne when it is written on, you know, like in France and everywhere. So it was written Shampanskaya in Russian, and when it was in English, or well, in English, it was sparkling wine. So that was the idea. But for the Soviet people, it still was Shampanskaya, champagne, and the only champagne that they knew and that they liked. The difference was that the Soviet people liked sweet champagne. Things like dry and brut were not possible. They were not even produced in the Soviet Union during Soviet period. Only demi-sweet and sweet were produced, and they were supposed to be the best drink for women. Well, champagne is everywhere, the best. The Soviet champagne is the best, and that's, you can see it's the picture of the end of 1930s, and you can see the bottle of champagne here. The faces and the entourage is very simple, so simple people do that. This is the episode from the very popular film Karnavalnaya Noch about the New Year celebration, and you will see here that everybody drinks champagne. It was propaganda on the one hand that everybody should drink champagne on the New Year, and at the same time it shows that how it was in reality.
Свою про 5 минут, эту песенку мою пускай поют. Пусть летит она по свету, я дарю вам песню эту песенку про 5 минут. 5 минут, 5 минут, бой часов раздастся вскоре. 5 минут, 5 минут, помиритесь все, кто в ссоре. 5 минут, разобраться, если строго, даже в эти 5 минут можно сделать очень много. 5 минут, 5 минут, бой часов раздастся вскоре, помиритесь все, кто в ссоре.
На часах у нас 12 без 5, Новый год уже, наверное, в пути. К нам мчится полным ходом, скоро скажем с Новым годом. На часах 12 без 5.
Новый год он не ждет, он у самого ворона. 5 минут пробегут, их осталось там немного. Милый друг, поспеши, зря терять минут не надо. Что не сказано, скажи, не откладывая надо. Милый друг, поспеши, что не сказано, скажи, не откладывая надо. 5 минут решают люди иногда не жениться ни за что и никогда. Но бывает, что минута все меняет очень круто, все меняет раз и навсегда. Новый год недалек, пожелать хочу вам счастья. Вот тебе паренек, без 5 минут он мастер.
Да, есть. So you can see that champagne was on every table. Mayonnaise, it's another thing with a French name and with absolutely Russian content, because what was Russian, Soviet mayonnaise had nothing to do with French mayonnaise. And again, it was the same time and the same person. It was Mikoyan's initiative, and this sauce became very popular. And in the Soviet cookbook, there were recommendations how to use mayonnaise because it was new for the people. And even fruit salads were recommended to have with mayonnaise. But, well, later this disappeared, but in 1930, in the cookbook of 1939, there's fruit salad with mayonnaise. Well, it is not possible to translate polufabbricate, half ready, well, I couldn't find the translation, but they were very popular. We'll just see the pictures. You could have, well, there was the whole dinner, yes, the whole dinner, 3 pieces, soup, the second course, and dessert from the packages. Well, the bouillon blocks, canned food, all these things happened right before the Second World War. The production of them started before the Second World War. Pelmeni, traditional Russian pelmeni, it was kind of sensation. It was not possible to produce them before the refrigerators were brought to Russia, to the Soviet Union. But after that, they became one of the simplest and easiest food to prepare. That's from the report of Anastas Mikoyan in 1936. By this year, well, it was the first year that he was in charge of food production. Only new factories and plants were built. I think that it looks quite impressive, and very in different kinds: meat, bacon, sugar, milk, so tea production, everything started. And not all things are mentioned here, like champagne production and juices production. So it was really kind of a revolution. That's a painting from 1937 showing, some sweets being produced. Chocolate factories. And sweet things. And the main, but the main idea was that Russian Soviet people should have not only plenty of food, but good food, delicious food. And I think that somehow it was a mistake, a political mistake. But there was an attempt to make popular various kinds of a new food for the Russian people taste, like crabs, salads with crabs. Well, they became popular, by the way, another kind of salad. Sturgeon and expensive fish, and caviar, of course. Caviar. That was the food for rich people, now became available. Well, if you have money, it was possible to buy it. Even things like asparagus and olives and French-style cheeses were tried to be introduced to the Soviet table, but they never found their way, and they were never popular. There was one idea that, both Anastas Mikoyan and Stalin, they were both people from, they were not ethnically Russians. Mikoyan was Armenian and Stalin was from Georgia. And their tastes were different. And, well, I can't say about Stalin and his tastes, but I read about Mikoyan's taste, that they were very good taste for food. They liked good things, good food, but things that were not, they were not common, not known by Russian people, like various kinds of cheeses, like olives, different greenery. Greenery was never popular in Russia. So the attempts were good, but they failed. Well, you could buy everything in the shop, but at the same time, like you know that Soviet lines, Soviet queues became notorious. So it was possible, but not always and not everywhere. And you know, we have no time. Well, you know, it's a book of tasty and healthy food, and there were lots of illustrations taken from this book. I just wanted at the end to show you one small piece, the sample content. It's a documentary film. Oh, потише только, там музыка громкая. It's a documentary film. It will show you, it was called To the Abundance.